Gravity shaped every move, not muscles. To turn an oak log into planks, men wrestled tons of timber down slopes so steep today's machines would tip and fail. They guided each trunk with iron hooks, inch by inch, knowing one misstep could waste months. This wasn't brute strength, it was geometry, ritual, and centuries of precision. But the true secret behind hand-sawn oak lies far deeper than lost technique. The moment you realize how much was risked, and what was permanently engraved in every plank, you'll never see wood the same way again. Elias gripped the reins, his boots planted in mud at the edge of a Bavarian ridge, as two draft horses strained against their padded collars. The log behind them, a fresh oak trunk, nearly a meter thick, had been felled at dawn, its path chosen days in advance so gravity would do the heavy lifting. No one wasted strength where the slope could be harnessed. The front end of the log was chained to a wooden arch, lifting it just enough that the rear dragged against the earth. As the horses leaned forward, the rough bark pressed into the soil, creating friction that slowed the descent, without a single brake lever or wheel in sight. Every step was a calculation. On these 20 to 30% inclines, a slip meant disaster, but the system was built for this ground. The horses moved in fits and starts, guided by voice and touch, while Elias walked ahead, scanning for roots and stones that could tip the log or break a leg. When the path steepened, he called for a pause, then wrapped a binder chain around a sapling, letting friction bleed off momentum. Sometimes a cant hook was jammed into the bark, giving a man just enough leverage to pivot the log away from a rut or keep it from rolling sideways. No one here tried to outmuscle the landscape. Every move followed the old rule. What can roll should never be carried, what can slide should never be lifted. The final stretch led through a chute carved into the hillside, where the log's own weight did most of the work. The horses stepped aside, and gravity took over, the trunk sliding the last meters into the sawmill yard. There, it landed with a thud that echoed through the valley. No lifting, no wasted motion. Elias wiped the sweat from his brow, knowing that every ounce of energy saved on the slope would be needed for what came next. The log lay ready, perfectly positioned by nothing but slope, friction, and a century's worth of learned patience. Johann entered the yard, boots crunching, eyes fixed on the oak, over 4 meters long, heavy as a car. Positioning it wasn't about strength, but exactness. Two men worked the canthaken, iron hooks with polished handles, easing the log into place. Johann guided with gestures, each adjustment deliberate. The log had to settle dead center, its axis squared to the buried pillar frame. Even a slight misalignment risked wasted timber or a plank too thin to use. Grooved beams, carved to match the log's uneven belly, caught and held it without a single nail. Iron dog clamps followed, hammered in until their teeth bit deep. Only when Johann was satisfied did the flask of schnapps pass around, not for celebration, but as a ritual to steady hands before the first cut. The broad axe, bright bile, came next. Its offset handle let the craftsman's knuckles clear the wood, each swing calculated. Johann chalked a line down the trunk, his thumb stained black with soot and oil. The first blows were heavy, thick slabs falling away to reveal pale oak. Each stroke swept close to the chalk, shaving curls so thin they drifted on the breeze. Masters like Johann worked within a millimeter of the line, leaving a surface flat as glass. Now the chalk line, a black, oily string stretched tight from end to end. Johann snapped it, leaving a mark that settled any debate, a contract between man and wood. Every cut that followed would answer to this verdict. Plumb bobs dropped from the line, confirming the geometry. No one spoke. The log, now locked in its fate, could not be corrected if a mistake was made. The crew prepared for the hoist. The saw frame waited, anchored by a pillar buried deep. Side struts and diagonal rails braced the structure. Men rocked the log up slope beams, sweat soaking their shirts. As the timber crested the frame, more than half its length overhung the supports. Chains, padding blocks, and wedges fixed it perfectly horizontal. Johann checked every angle. Only then was the timber ready for the saw. Fritz steadied himself on a platform barely wider than a boot, eyes fixed on the chalk line, hands wrapped around the saw. Above, the Obermann inhaled as the Untermann below exhaled, each breath dictating the rise and fall of the blade. The saw bit only on the downstroke, teeth singing through green oak, then glided up again with almost no resistance. Every stroke demanded focus. One slip, and the blade would wander, wasting days or even weeks of labor. The dance between the two men was silent but exacting, each learning to trust the other's rhythm, their bodies aching with the effort. The platform offered no comfort, just 26 centimeters wide, perched high above the ground, with no railings and nothing to catch a misstep. Fritz's diary from 1911 described the fear of falling as constant, especially after dusk when exhaustion blurred the edges of vision. A full day's work, 12 hours or more, earned a single taler, enough to keep bread and lard on the table, but never enough to rest easy. 3 to 4 weeks passed before a single log was reduced to planks, each day measured in sweat and sawdust. As the pull grew heavier and sawdust thickened, both men knew the blade was dulling. No amount of strength could replace sharpness. Maintenance was not a pause, but survival. Steel teeth, dulled by green oak, and hours of sweat demanded attention long before they threatened to stall the work. Filing the saw was no chore to rush. Each tooth was shaped with a wide-faced file, restoring the keen edge lost to friction and sap. The rhythm of the file, slow and deliberate, set the pace us for the next hours. But sharpness alone did not guarantee progress. The teeth had to be set, bent outward, one left, one right, by just a millimeter. This created a kerf wider than the blade itself, ensuring the saw would never bind, even in the wettest, toughest wood. The process called for patience. File every other tooth on one side, flip the blade, and finish the rest. Only if the set measured true did the sawyer stop, resisting the urge to tinker further. Every stroke of the file saved countless strokes of the saw. In this hidden labor, human strength was preserved, not spent. The saw, now sharp and true, waited for the next cut, ready to turn effort into progress once again. The final moments of the cut demanded a steady hand and absolute patience. As the sawyers neared the end, they left a narrow bridge of uncut wood at the center, a deliberate pause in weeks of relentless effort. This last connection kept the plank from twisting or crashing down under its own weight. Only when every wedge and chain was set just so did the elder carpenter step forward, crowbar in hand. With a slow, practiced motion, he pried the heavy oak free. The plank slid down, guided by gravity and care, never by force. On the underside remained a small and angled remnant, the sealy or sole, a sliver left untouched because the frame blocked the blade from passing all the way through. Old hands recognized this mark instantly. It was proof no machine had touched this timber, a fingerprint left by those who shaped it. In the guilds, seasoned craftsmen taught apprentices to look for the sealy when judging a beam's origins. Over time, planks like these, stacked to dry with air moving between their layers, would develop a silver-gray patina. Each one carried a story, cataloged not in ledgers but in the quiet language of wood and work. The sealy stood as both a safeguard and a signature, evidence of the craft, and a reminder that every board cut by hand bore the spirit of its maker. Today, mass-produced lumber erases the marks of the maker, yet every hand-sawn plank in an old house still holds its silent record. As efficiency replaces endurance, we risk losing not just a method, but a memory. Skill leaves a fingerprint. Will anyone notice if it vanishes? Share your thoughts below.